Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're tackling a really big question, maybe the big question. How do you actually build a life that feels happy, effective, meaningful? Especially if, you look around right now and that just feels out of reach. Maybe your career feels stalled or things in your personal life are just kind of chaotic and you can't figure out why.
It's a universal feeling at some point, isn't it?
Exactly. So today we're zeroing in on that. We're unpacking a specific framework from excerpts of the 12 Golden Rules for Life. It promises pretty boldly a winning mindset.
Hmm.
And it doesn't really mince words. It basically says, look, if you're struggling, if things aren't working, this framework may well be the answer to your problems. So our job today is to look at how it claims to do that. What's the mechanism?
Right, and the analysis is key here because what's interesting is how it avoids a lot of the typical self-help buzzwords or, complicated psych terms. It's presented as very practical, almost like non-technical psychology. The main goal, as it puts it, is simply to help you understand just how the world works. The idea is if you grasp these fundamental laws of success and interaction, what the source calls the rules of the world, then you can stop guessing and start, operating effectively, like getting the instruction manual.
An operating manual for life. I like that. Okay, let's get into the substance then. If we accept this idea of fundamental rules of the world, not philosophy, but like predictable patterns for success, what specifically does it promise to change in your life? It's not just vague improvement, right? It mentions 4 specific areas.
Yeah, exactly. It structures the whole approach around 4 distinct pillars. These dozen rules are designed to stabilize and build up each one. So the first pillar is internal, foundational. It's about attacking deep-rooted emotional and psychological problems, really getting your inner house in order.
Okay, hold on. Attacking deep-rooted problems. How does a rule book, claim to do that? That sounds like a pretty tall order.
It does, yeah. It seems to tackle it through, enforced discipline and some pretty radical shifts in how you look at things. For instance, if you think about what rule number 1 might be in a system like this, it's often something around, say, the discipline of radical responsibility.
Ethical responsibility.
Yeah. The argument is that a lot of emotional turmoil comes from, blaming external factors. So if you enforce a rule that says you are 100% accountable for your own results no matter what, it kind of forces you to reclaim agency. It's a way to push you out of feeling like a victim and, into taking action.
So it's less like traditional therapy and more like
Yeah.
behavioral engineering almost.
Interesting.
Good.
Okay, what about the other 3 pillars then?
Right. So the second one is very external, very practical, helping you build and develop your professional career.
Right. And this isn't just about cash, but about being consistently competent, creating value. The rules there would focus on habits, goal setting, that kind of thing. Then pillar 3 is relationships, improving your personal connections. The source seems to get that, being isolated is a recipe for misery. So there are rules for social conduct, communication, handling conflict.
Makes sense.
And the 4th pillar sort of ties it all together. Transforming your overall attitude towards life, managing hope, anxiety, staying motivated, even when things go wrong.
Okay.
So you've got the inner world, career, relationships, and the big picture mindset.
I appreciate that breakdown. It makes the claim feel a bit more concrete. It's not just be happy, it's do these specific things, adopt these mindsets, and happiness or effectiveness is the likely outcome. And the source material really leans into showing proof, right? It emphasizes using real stories, examples, making the rules feel tangible, not just abstract ideas. You see them working in other people's lives.
Exactly. And that idea of visible success leads straight into one of the framework's biggest claims, that this stuff is replicable. It doesn't just say these are good ideas. It suggests that some of the most spectacularly successful people recently got there precisely because they were following these rules, whether they knew it consciously or not. Which is super appealing, right? Because it suggests success isn't just random luck or, being born brilliant. It implies there's a formula. Master these 12 behaviors, these rules, and you can build success. And the promise is that it's accessible. Anyone can do it. Doesn't matter where you're starting from. Just absorb it, apply it.
Precisely. The rules are framed as like the underlying code for being effective in society. Learn the code, build what you want.
Okay, but here's something I found really interesting. The source says it's for everyone, young or old, but then it specifically calls it especially useful for teenagers or people in their early 20s. Why that specific focus on young adults if these rules are supposedly universal?
That's a great question. I think the emphasis there is mainly preventative. Preventative.
Yeah, think of it like getting vaccinated intellectually, maybe. When you're just starting out in adult life, you're bombarded with, well, all sorts of bad habits, conflicting advice, potentially really unhelpful social patterns.
Sure.
So the source seems to be saying, look, someone just starting out really needs a few clear pointers to help steer them in the right direction. Before those negative patterns get deeply ingrained and take years of work to fix later. It's like giving them a compass early on, a guide to the correct, proper, and effective way to engage with the world from the get-go.
Ah, I see. So for an older person, it might be about repair, but for a younger person, it's about avoiding the damage in the first place. That definitely frames it as high value for someone looking to get a strong start. Can we make that even more concrete for the listener? Like, what's an example of a rule that directly tackles that preventative angle, something designed to help you avoid common early mistakes?
Okay, yeah. A rule focusing on your internal dialogue often shows up in these kinds of frameworks. Let's imagine rule number 7 is something like master the internal monologue and act on the truth.
Act on the truth. Okay.
This kind of rule would zero in on avoiding self-deception and that inner voice that talks you down. The source probably argues that a huge pitfall, especially for young adults, is talking yourself out of doing hard but necessary things. Procrastination, lying to yourself about how much effort you're really putting in, choosing comfort over actual growth.
Yeah, I could see that being common.
So Rule 7 would demand like brutal honesty with yourself about what you're capable of, what you've committed to. It stops you building your life on wishful thinking or, convenient lies. That self-honesty is crucial for your career, for your emotional stability. It loops right back to those 4 pillars we talked about.
That makes total sense. The rules aren't just about what to do, but critically, what not to do, what to stop doing. And this focus on avoiding pitfalls leads us straight to what might be the most intense claim in the source material. It really doesn't hold back on how important this advice is supposed to be.
No, it absolutely does not. It states quite plainly that it's not an exaggeration to claim that following these rules could be the difference between whether or not your life is a success or a failure.
Wow, that's a massive claim. Success or failure resting on 12 concepts. How do they justify something so definitive? That sounds almost like an ultimatum.
Well, the justification seems rooted in the idea of like cumulative effect or cumulative failure. They're likely not saying break one rule once and poof, your life's over. It's more like life compounds, like interest, but for your choices. If you consistently violate these rules of the world, maybe by refusing responsibility, always choosing immediate pleasure, lying to yourself constantly, those small failures add up. They compound over years, over decades, until eventually you kind of wake up and find yourself on a path that's really, really hard to change. The failure becomes cemented.
Right, it's the pattern, not the single instance.
Exactly. So putting it all together, what does this framework really offer? It's presented as this comprehensive package. Mental attitude, life skills, career, emotions, relationships, all bundled under these rules of the world. And the big appeal isn't just the content, it's the claim efficiency. The promise is you don't need to spend decades figuring things out the hard way. You don't need to juggle dozens of conflicting philosophies.
You just get the manual.
You get the dozen core guidelines, the operating manual, to steer your whole adult life effectively. Maximum impact, minimum wasted effort, supposedly.
Okay, so let's quickly recap what we pulled out. We've got this system aiming to transform your attitude and actions via 12 core rules. We touched on examples like radical responsibility and mastering your internal monologue. It promises success based on patterns seen in highly successful people. It targets those 4 key life areas: emotions, career, relationships, and overall attitude. And it offers preventative guidance, flagged as especially useful if you're just starting out. But the foundational claim, the really heavy one, is that these rules could literally make the difference between your life being judged a success or a failure.
So if the framework really does, as it claims, explain just how the world works when it comes to being effective, then the question for you, the listener, isn't really if you'll bump up against these rules. Life's probably going to test you on all of them eventually. It'll push you towards following them or facing the consequences of not following them. The real choice you have is how you learn them. Do you figure it out painfully through years, maybe decades of trial and error? Or do you try to consciously adopt a ready-made formula that's designed, at least in theory, for maximum efficiency?
That's a powerful framing of the choice. Okay, building on that. If the world does operate on these kinds of rules, and if something like the discipline of radical responsibility is fundamental, What's the single biggest excuse, the most comfortable bit of blame, or maybe the cherished victim narrative you personally need to just abandon right now today to start acting in that correct, proper, and effective way the source talks about? Something to think about. That's your assignment. Till next time, we'll talk to you soon.